What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another video. Male beauty. This is something that not only have I experienced, but I've seen. So here's the interesting part about beauty, right? And in particular, for a man to be handsome or good looking, or um, is socially considered, you know, a cutie, if you will, is that in a world of uglies, you're the ugly one. Okay? Marinate, marinate on that. Chew on it for a bit. In a world of uglies, you are the ugly one. And the thing is, you have to understand. People like to say there's a beauty bias, and somehow life is easier when you're a good-looking person or when you're a beautiful face. And contrary to that idea is that in many ways, life is harder for you, and people are also mean and treat you worse off because they begrudge you. Because in their mind, they think the same thing as the beauty bias suggests, which is that this person's life is easy. So I'm going to be very clear about the fact that I don't want to also make things easy for them as well. So if anything, things become harder and more difficult and more treacherous. You have to follow rules and you have to kind of abide by certain guidelines, mores of the moment. And if you don't, you'll get punished, sometimes viciously. And you may be judged on the outset, and people will suggest that, oh, it's just a pretty face. You didn't have to work so hard to get to where you got to, or someone gave him a handout, or things are easy for you, or things get done for you because of X, Y, Z. It's never about the fact that maybe you are intelligent, maybe you have worked hard, maybe you have birthed opportunities for yourself from your own sort of sweat and tears, right? And that's not something that they tend to focus on. They overlook that. Um, and it's a tragedy. But I'll give you an example. I have an uncle who's a gorgeous man who I look like a Down syndrome child next to. Striking, good looking dude. You know, chiseled face. You know, these eyes. You know, thick, hairy, very good looking, striking. Tall, thick, hairy, very good looking guy. I mean, it's just like this classically handsome Mediterranean sort of aesthetic, right? And what happens to a guy like that, good looking dude, and with a good heart, beautiful man, very nice person, um, likes to help people. And what ends up happening? He ends up getting with a vicious woman, with a woman that um, is obviously not as good looking as him, is quite frankly ugly in comparison to him. And what happens? His life is horrible, as a result of the decision that he made. He was too green to make a decision like that. A guy like that who had not really that much experience with women, because you have to understand, when you're a good looking guy, when it comes to women, things are easier for you, um, comparatively, right? So you don't have to really get any game. You don't really have to work on yourself. You are as is. And typically what that attracts is these type of monsters, and you get into big trouble as a result. And on the flip side of that is, like, an ugly guy has to work really hard to get his game right, to find other things besides his looks to get attention, right? Status, money, power, maybe some muscles, things of that nature. But when you're a good looking guy, things become easy. And so what ends up happening is you attract these type of women that it's kind of like what ugly dudes do, right? They want to get a bad girl to kind of like, to kind of suggest and show what they've been able to accomplish. And it's the same thing with ugly women, right? They do the same thing. They want to try to get the best made possible to kind of show and demonstrate what they've been able to accomplish in regards to that. But it's awful. And I've told them, I've been honest with them. I said, why, if you're such a good looking guy and such a nice guy and so intelligent, like, how could you fall for this trap? Like, how could you end up making it such a terrible decision in terms of who you decide to marry and have children with? And it's just like, all he could say was that he just didn't know what he was getting himself into. I really don't know. But it was a lesson. It was a hard lesson in thinking you can't just coast off your good looks. It's just not enough. Because unfortunately, what you end up attracting is really bad individuals that, aside from his good looks, if you put that away, the fact that he was just a really nice guy, he is a sweet guy, he got taken advantage of. And I don't think he was ready. I don't think he even knew that there was vicious people like that out in the world, like vultures that were out here ready to, you know, take advantage of any nice person that they saw. if there's any other reason why you don't need to be nice, that's one of them right there. It's a very, very hard lesson that I learned the hard way, that I made sure I was like, man, I never want to end up with someone like that. And so I was always very diligent about staying away from anybody that even remotely resembled his wife, um, for better or worse, and it was just a good lesson, and thinking to myself, well, just because you have good looks doesn't mean that you're gonna get a partner that's on par with your beauty. In his case, right, it's a tragedy, and there's so many other things that I would have made sure not to happen, but regardless, they happened. So I say all that to say what, which is that just because you're a good looking guy, don't expect things to be easy for you. In fact, you should expect things to be difficult and treacherous, and that people will betray you and be mean to you, and treat you as if you're the ugly one. And that's the irony of beauty, right? Is that in a world of uglies, you are the ugly one. But anyways, I hope this helps, and I'll see you in the next.